it. We're on. We're on. Hey, it's Friday. Oh yeah, look, I can see myself. Yo. Say hello if you're there. Say hello to the shop cat. He's back. Meow. We got some good stuff today. We're gonna save you some money. You're gonna help me with a project. It's Friday. We're in week, don't know, 5 maybe, is it, of lockdown, something like that. Got a car here. Hello. Right, let me find the comments so I can say hello to you guys. As the weeks go by, I'm getting more and more organised at this. I'm becoming a Facebook Live expert. So, how's your week? Tell me in the comments. Come on, I want to know. What's going on? I've seen more than one person in the shop this week, so that's good. We got people coming in. Had some people here today. It was lovely to see them. A lot better than doing Zoom calls, which I'm getting a bit bored of. So it's nice to see people face to face. I haven't seen any comments yet. I can see 14 of you on there. Let me know your names. Say hello, tell me where you're watching from, and we'll get into today's stuff. Let's have a look.
Comments are coming through.
Cool. I don't know what it's like where you are, but it is actually not too bad here. The sun has just come out. It's been raining all afternoon, but it's getting a bit better now. So that's good news because it's Friday. It did say it was going to rain all week, but that means we can do something. Right, let's see if I can get this to refresh and get some comments, because at the moment I am aware from the cameraman they're coming through, but I haven't quite seen them yet. Just give people a second to get on. Oh, 11 of you commenting already. Right. Hello, everybody. Hello to Dolly. Hello, Dolly. How are you doing? I hope your friend managed to fit her wind deflectors. Let's turn this, got a bit of volume down so we didn't get any reception. Adrian, how are you doing, mate? Where have the last 7 days gone? I know. Where have the last 7 days gone? I saw your virtual auction catalogue. That looked good. Looked like you had some really cool cars on there, mate. Hello from Vancouver, Joanne. Hello, Sam. How are you? Gregor from Germany. Hello. Very nice to see you again from Germany. We've got a good selection today. Julie from Orkney. Busy as usual as a teacher. Pat, how are you, my friend? Nice to see you. Julie, are you teaching from home at the moment, or are you having to go into the class? Ah, Fabian from France. Wow, cool, guys. Nice to see you. Elliot works here. Some of you have met him, some of you haven't, but he is someone that is still on furlough, sadly. But we are getting more and more people back in, which is very, very exciting. Honestly, it's nothing better than coming into work and seeing people smiling back at you, so that's lovely. Ian, hello, nice to see you, mate, from Teesdale. Hi from sunny Leigh-on-Sea. Paul, nice, with a fist bump as well. Fist bump to you. Simon, hello, very good, mate, how are you? Phil from Somerset, lovely. Teaching online. I know, Julie, lots of my friends and colleagues say that their children are doing their learning online and generally driving them crazy one way or another. Hello, Olivier, how are you? Lovely to see you all. Right, so I've got some good bits for you today. What I've got is, I called this How to Save £480 while you're in lockdown without saving a penny. I think it's a lot more than that. I've got some fantastic bits for you today that I'm going to help you with and show you how you can save money without having to spend any money, because one of the things about lockdown is loads of people have got broken cars, but I'm going to get into that in a minute. Firstly, I want to do something interactive and I really want your help with it. So we've been working for a few months on trying to build a Figaro that was a super Figaro, so we really wanted to improve it, and we've reached a point that we're a little unsure. We need to decide exactly on the running gear and how this car's going to run, and we've looked at a few different routes, a few different ways to do it, and I want to get some feedback. I know roughly what it's gonna cost to do it, and so I'll give you some ideas on that and see what you think. So the choices that we're weighing up at the moment, we've gone a reasonable amount of the way down the line to make the car electric. But the thing that is holding us back at the moment is it's a really expensive conversion. So although with electric, you eliminate all the hassle of the gearbox revving out at high revs, and you obviously your running costs are absolute, at a complete minimum. The way that it's coming out, you're probably looking at something like a £30,000 project to do it. So it's really expensive to do it. And obviously when you're comparing that to the cost of, it's going to get you into ULEZ and things like that, I don't know how much value that is to you guys. I mean, how much is it worth? Because the other choice that we've got in our team, we've got someone that's got a massive amount of experience in engine conversions. And the other option that we're weighing up is using another JDM, so Japanese domestic market engine, with a really nice 5-speed gearbox. So the advantage you get from that is all that motorway driving would be really nice to do. You get a little bit more power. You'd move away from the unreliability of the K10 engine, so we'd probably use a Honda engine because they're the most reliable. And you get a bit more power, parts would be cheap, and you wouldn't be blowing them up, revving them to 4,000 revs, and you get a lot more drivability. And we were going to mix that with some better braking and things like that. So guys, what do you think? So I'm just looking down at the list at what you're saying. Please let me know in the comments. I massively appreciate it, because we don't want to build something that we want, although we love doing it. We want to build something that's going to be really useful and cost effective to you guys. So Sarah says going electric would be good for towns and cities. I agree, Sarah. It's the way the industry is going. It's the way the whole automotive industry is going. The challenge is at the moment that for a car that's, worth whatever your Figaro or a Figaro is worth, to then add, 20, 30, even more thousand on top, I don't know how many people that's going to work for, because it puts the car into a completely different bracket. So I don't know what you think about that. Brooks says electric conversions will be better as the technology advances. Brooks, you're quite right. That's one of the things. I've visited quite a few electric car places over the past few months, all around the world really. And one thing that I notice is that they massively have to keep up in terms of, there was a guy that owned an electric shop that built his own electric car, and over 6 years he rebuilt it 4 times because the technology changes so often. And that's one of the other challenges, and so yeah, that's what we're trying to weigh up. Sam says about a diesel Figaro. I mean, it could be the way. I think that for us, if we're going to keep an engine in the car, we'd probably suggest putting another petrol one in there, because it will work with the other bits in the car. And also, if it's got a 5-speed gearbox and it's a good quality engine, it's going to make the car really drivable. We can slightly upgrade the brakes and things like that as well. I'm just aware that when you drive these cars on the motorway or the freeway, wherever you are, they're not great. And we see so many people that come in with blown up engines, and they haven't necessarily done anything wrong. It's just the engine can't handle being revved at 4,000 for days on end. Fabian says not a big fan of the VTEC engine, keep the soul of the figs. Fabian, how would you do it then? What about if we did it and used a Nissan engine instead? So we probably wouldn't use a micro engine, but we might use a different Nissan engine. How would that would that still be something that would do you think would spoil the soul of the car? Brooks says about the transmission. Brooks, we go with a 5-speed manual, and what we do is trim it all up inside so it looked really trick and slick, and didn't look like when, sometimes I've seen conversions and they look like a conversion, but all around the gear shifter we trim it up, make it look nice, but you'd have a really cool 5-speed box and it would feel smooth, and we'd hand make all the engine mounts and stuff like that, so it'd be really nice. We're not sure which Honda engine we'd use, only one of the smaller ones. we were probably thinking that we'd go with something. So a Figaro is about 90 horsepower, which is, if you think about a lawnmower, a Figaro is very close to that compared to most modern cars would be, I don't know, 150, 200. If we used one of the little Honda engines, you'd probably have about 130. So you'd have enough extra power to make it a bit nippy, but it wouldn't be out of control. I mean, there is the option that we could make one and put one of the bigger VTEC engines in it. A couple of the guys here have done that to their cars, but they're generally used as race cars and stuff, and then you're going to have to put bigger wheels on the car and things like that, and we didn't know, you know, we don't see so many people that want that. But if you want that, we'd like to build it. I know the guys here would love to, are always chewing my ear to put, can we put a massive engine in a Figaro and see what happens. Dolly says, for me, it's not about the speed. I prefer automatic and enjoy the ambience as I go. Yeah, I get that, Dolly. A lot of people do, and I enjoy that bit of it as well, definitely. But I think that it becomes impractical at times, and so yeah. Paul, definitely better engine with a 5-speed box, more accessible for people. Paul, yeah, that's our thinking on it, really. That if it's going to allow more people to enjoy it, because I think 2 reasons people don't end up enjoying them. One, because they can't drive them in a practical way. They can't drive them on the motorway, or they do, and then what happens is they get so many faults that in the end they just fall out of love with a car. And there's definitely a point we see with Figaro ownership that at some stage people just fall out of love with a car. If they get so many faults, in the end it all falls apart. Karen, glad to see you, glad to join for the first time. I can see your picture there, you're with a nice black Figaro. Glenn, how are you? How are you from Michigan? Lovely to see you today. Olivier says a VTEC Honda would be nice, so you wouldn't be worried that it was a Honda rather than a Nissan engine that we used, because that was the bit we weren't sure on. So yeah, just going back to the cost, somebody mentioned cost there, Sarah. So yeah, like we were saying, if we go fully electric, even if we're all the research and development, you're still into, you know, a 30+ grand project. You can go out and buy, you know, there's a guy I was talking to yesterday that's doing it with a Leaf, James, doing a great project. There's a blog to it, and although the cost might be much lower, it'll take a considerable amount of his time, and we want to deliver a product that people can just come in, leave the car, get the conversion, and come back with the product. So yeah, it is very expensive to do it on the electric one. Going on to the 5-speed conversion with a little bit more power and some improved brakes and things like that, you're going to be looking more like 5,000 to 10,000, something like that. And it'll also be a kit, so you could always, you know, source your own engine if you know, to save you having to buy one from us or this country and ship it out, because obviously lots of you are all over the world. And that way we could supply it with engine mounts, a wiring loom, so it's just plug and play, and then you put it in and away you go. And hopefully we'd be able to do that so it was also reversible as well. So, you know, a lot of these things are popular, because if you then come to sell the car down the line, you can either sell it with the conversion or you can say that it can be changed back, whereas an electric one, it would probably be a no-no. How about a motorcycle engine, Sam? Yeah, I mean, something like that would work. To be honest, a lot of the challenge is that it's what's going to fit in there. That's why we think we might have to use the Honda engine, because they're compact. The Nissan engines are big and bulky, and to be honest, they're not really that good. So that's why we're thinking of changing brands if we're going to do it. Pat says electric is no good in Cornwall. We got to drive 300 miles to get anywhere, haven't you, Pat, from Cornwall? But yeah, I know what you mean. The range, the one we were looking at, used some Tesla parts and some Vauxhall parts, and the range was going to be about 120 miles on that. Yeah, I agree. Jonathan says about the cost reducing. That's quite true. Neil says, sorry I'm late, I'm here now. Neil, we're just discussing different ways of converting the Figaro to make it more reliable. We've got a project on the go, and we're at a crossroads where maybe we're going to go electric, or maybe we're going to go to an improved petrol engine with a 5-speed gearbox. So we were just discussing that. Simon says Fiat Twin Air. That's interesting. So would you be offended by the fact that would you be turned off it by the fact that it wasn't Nissan in the engine? Would that bother you? Dennis says electric's the way to go. I completely agree with you guys. Electric is definitely the way. It's just such a tricky one because it's the cost of it, really. Fabian says VTEC will be great, just not 250 horsepower. I know what you mean. It's everybody thinks they want a bit more power, but I think a little car like this, if we put something in that was 130, 140 and just up the brakes a bit, it would just make it that comfortable, you know. I think about some of these journeys that I do, and I don't drive them very far, but I mean, I used to drive a Figaro all the time, every day. I used to live about a mile from the shop here. I used to drive it backwards and forwards every day. And in the end, I just couldn't do it. I drive a truck now because it's just practical, and I can cruise it up and down the motorway. And I think if it's that way for me. Oscar says the soul of the Figaro is the outer styling. Make it a wolf in Bonnie Sheep's clothing. Yeah, I mean, how many of you want some more performance, or are you really or are you just looking for reliability? Who wants to go faster in their Figaro? There's a few of you saying that you like the sound of that. Cool, man. Neil says a Chevy 6 litre. Neil, I think that would be really cool, but I think the problem would be that you wouldn't be able to see out the windscreen. In fact, that size engine, we'd probably have to have it on a trailer on the back. Brooks, I want to drive my Figaro, and that means on the highway too. Yeah, I know what you mean. Especially, I noticed when I was abroad recently, driving around in a Figaro, it was so impractical. And you know, when you're in the UK as well, we're all squashed together. It doesn't take us, going to a car show. A long way for us is to go to AceCap, which is an hour, and drive a few Figaros up there. But to get anywhere when you're, in the States especially, is a long way. Yeah, Tom says exactly. With a V8 with a conversion. Guys, that's really interesting. So we're going to go back and have a look at these bits and see what we can do. Reliability, says Wendy. So what about then if I ask you, so if there's one thing, only one thing, it's either goes faster, doesn't break down, or is reliable, what is the one thing? Comment and let me know on that. Julie says it has to be auto and long range, 26 miles a day. So an electric one would, Julie, it's just the cost thing. It's just, is it worth 30,000 to you to be that more reliable, and the other, because it's going to take you quite a while to get your money back on the performance. Your money back on the fuel with an electric at a 30 grand conversion, but you're still going to be a lot better off with a Honda or another Japanese import conversion. Nicholas says the main thing to him is reliability. Sam, a manual gearbox. Brooks, reliability, aftermarket parts. That's the other thing as well. The parts would be a lot easier to get. If we use something like a Honda, the parts are all over the place. If you're in America, you could buy the engine mounts and the wiring loom and get everything. So you're not having to mess about. Karen, the reliability. I think you're right. And like I said, one thing that I have noticed completely over the years is the life cycle of people owning Figaros. So some of them, this car actually, in fact, I sold to somebody about 12 years ago, and they've kept it the whole time. But generally, people just fall out of love, and they fall out of love when they break down. And sometimes we hate that, but there's nothing we can do. We keep trying to repair them. Wendy says ease of parts and reliability. Olivier Goulard says in capital letters, power. Nice, nice, Olivier. So what I take from this is it would be nice to have a bit more power and definitely some more reliability. Corey says I'd spend 10k on a swap if the performance was worth it. Neil, ideally stick him in Nissan. We are looking at that, Neil, with the Nissan thing, definitely. But their engines are bulky, and one of the challenges is the best Nissan engine we could come across was from a Nissan Sunny GTR, one of the GTIRs, because it was a nice little engine. It had a little bit more power. But the problem is they're rare and they're expensive. If we use a Honda engine, they're super reliable, they're pretty cheap, and they're really easy. There's loads of them. They've all got those little VTEC engines in. So we're going to end up coming up with a product that's easy for people to be able to use. Jonathan says, reliable. Tell us more about the suspension you said about on the previous Friday. Kevin, hi mate, how you doing? But if it goes faster, does it not mean you have to uprate the brakes? Well, we might uprate the brakes slightly as part of the kit, but what we probably won't do is, unless people ask for it, go stupidly fast. But also, the really nice thing about using one of those Honda engines is they're super tunable. So it's really easy for us to fit them in one or another style and do it in a different way. They're really easy to modify, to service, to do all of those bits to. At the moment, you've got an engine that's got parts that we have to reproduce all the time. We love doing it, we love making these parts, but it might be a better product for the whole community. Brooks thinks regardless of the engine you put into it, you're going to need upgrade other bits. Marios is watching. Hello Marios, you'll see the comments. Marios is our Honda expert, so he's going to help us with this, and he's passionate about making it Honda. Maz, which engine was it? Put it in the comments. Which are the ones we're considering? Which was the one that's 130-ish horsepower? Brooks says the Honda's ECU are very nice too. So yeah, we'd have to do a conversion to that, probably the air conditioning, the power steering and those bits, but we would do the whole thing as a kit. Corey says you could do 2 stages. Stage 2 would be with the turbo. Yeah, that's definitely the type of thing we're thinking, because the Figaro is a little bit let down by its engine, and the fact that although some of it is Nissan Micra, lots of it is one-off to the Figaro, and it's just not designed for any sort of hard work. Hence why, you know, one of the things we're back in doing this week is building engines, and we'd rather be building engines for people that want to have an improved car and enjoy the car more. At the moment, we're building engines because people are pissed off because their car's broken down, and that's fair enough. You would be, you know, you go down the motorway, often you're not doing anything at all, you're just driving along enjoying the car, and it just goes pop because of the age of it, and that's frustrating, definitely. Whereas at least if you're spending money and you're getting performance out of it, because the cost of the actual engine rebuild is going to be pretty similar for either one. So Maz, thanks mate. Maz says the B16A2 is 158 and the D16 is 125. So we'd be able to have choices on different ways of doing it and different upgrades. Right, keep those comments coming in, guys. I'm going to move on to the other bits that I was going to go through with you today, which is how to save some money. Friday, lockdown, money saving, yeah. But keep the comments coming in, because we'll read through them later, and what we'll probably do is spend a bit of time brainstorming it, and then we'll let you know which way we've gone for the project. But I can tell you that it will be a super fig. Also, in about a week, maybe a week and a half, we have another little secret project that we've been working on for about 6 months now, and I'll share that with you. I know it's nearly done, we're just waiting for some trim work, so that's going to be ready, and it will be for sale, and we're only going to build one, and it's not a Figaro. Exciting. I know that it is the car that every Figaro owner will consider, or not, maybe not every, but it's the car over the years that most Figaro owners have left the Figaro and gone into. I'm not saying any more because I'll get overexcited. Okay, wow, you guys, I love it today. You're smashing the comments in. There's loads in there. That's fantastic. I do appreciate it. I've said to you guys, as I've spoken to some of you individually through the weeks, that it really means a lot that you've come along on a Friday and spent your time with me, and I hope I've been able to add some value. So, let me have a go at that now. So the reason that I came up with the title this week of how to save 480 quid without spending a penny is because I was in the parts department the other day and I looked at all the packages that were going out, and I was discussing it with Maz that was on this a minute ago, and all of the parts are the same parts. Obviously not every single one, but you're all having the same problems, and many of them, including the calls and the emails and the pictures we get sent in, relate to something to do with lockdown. And I started to go through the list of the bits, and I thought, this is crazy, we need to go through it because it's costing you money to not be using your cars because of the bits that are breaking. Just going to grab a spanner. Now, some of the bits that we've talked about, we've mentioned these in previous weeks. Some we have and some we haven't. But I thought it was important to go back over them because there's massive money savings. The first thing is we're just sending out batteries like there's no tomorrow. And Figaros, old cars in general, but especially Figaros, are shocking for batteries. Now, I said I would tell you how to do this without spending a penny, and I will. So, on this car, it has got an isolation switch on the battery, but if you haven't got that and you don't want to spend the money on one of those, if you do, I think they're fantastic, but if you don't, you can just disconnect the terminal. So obviously on your car, if you haven't got one of these isolator switches, I've just loosened that 10mm nut off there, and literally that just comes off, and then you leave it out the way, and when you put it back on, the worst that's going to happen is if you've got the alarm will go off. I mean, by the time you post this and all of the hassle that goes with it, the amount of you guys that are spending whatever it is, somewhere between probably 60 and 80 quid to get a battery, or go and get one fitted at your local garage and pay money, just disconnect it. Your Figaro generally lasts a week or so. If we hadn't have done that on all of the cars around site, I imagine 95% of them wouldn't start, and because they're small little batteries, they tend to not charge back up again. Now, the other thing that we talked about, and so many of you have asked me about this, I'm just going to go through it again, is damage from the car being sat around. So I'll start with it when it's outside, and then I'll move on to it being inside. So when the car is outside, it's not really sensible to cover it up because you'll get lots of condensation and it will get dirt and damp under the cover. But it will get tree sap, bird's mess, all of that type of stuff on it. And it's really important. It partly came to mind because I had a car, I'm just leaving this out, I had a car literally the week before last that I left parked out somewhere, not a Figaro, and it got bird's mess on it, and it's actually wrecked a bit of the paintwork, and that was because it had been painted in the last 2 years, and that will be, hopefully we can save that. But the bird's mess was on it for 40 minutes maybe, something like that. So I'm going to just tell you again exactly how you want to clean these. So if you have, this car is actually clean, but if you had some bird's mess that had fallen on the paintwork here, you want 2 buckets. One bucket with soapy water and your sponge or your hand cloth, and use this technique to clean the car anyway, and the other bucket absolutely clean, nothing in it at all, been washed out, no grit in the bottom, anything like that. It's called a 2 bucket technique. If you're getting bird's mess off, you just want to get it as wet as possible, so you just keep soaking into it like that. Do not do what feels natural. Put your thumb into the back of the cloth and start scrubbing away at it, because you'll leave a big scratch against the paintwork. Just keep gently soaking it, gently soaking it. Once you've done that, rinse the cloth out in the clean water, get it all nice and clean in there, get all the grit and all the rubbish and all the acidity that comes out the bird's mess, and then go back through the cycle again. At the end of it, you can give it a polish by hand, just using any sort of wax polish, but the important thing is that you don't damage anything while you're getting it off. And also just that you get it off, because it literally can eat the paintwork. The car that I was talking about, it had been painted about, it must have been at least 18 months. It was one of those hot days, so on the hot days the paint gets softer. The bird's mess went on it. It was on there for about half an hour, and it's eaten into it already. I polished it by hand, and it's left like a stain on it, but it will yeah, it will need at least machine polishing. Hopefully it won't need to be repainting. So making sure you keep the car clean and you wash it correctly, that is definitely going to save you some money. Now, the next bit I'll do this bit next, is brakes. We're selling lots of brake parts, but not really because people want to upgrade them. It's just because they're sticking on. Now, there's two things you can do here. I'm going to show you how to do it, how to stop the brakes sticking up, or how to grease them. We're going to try and do that on here, try and do a bit of live mechanicking. But also the important thing I'd say is just drive the car as well. If you're not using it and it's sat there, don't leave it with the handbrake on, sat on the drive, getting hot and cold every day, and not drive it. Really, going back to engines again, to make sure your Figaro engine lasts as long as it possibly can, you want to be getting it warm and getting all the oil to circulate. Now, if you're only going 5 minutes backwards and forwards to the shop, the oil's not getting warm enough. You want to be driving at least 15 minutes down the road and making sure that the car's getting nice and hot, everything's circulating, because the oil does different things at different temperatures, and you want to make sure it gets hot all the way through the range. So make sure you're giving the car a drive. That will also give the brakes chance to come on and off, and the other moving parts on the car chance to move. You always hear me and everyone else working here talking about rubber parts on the car. Most of the things we reproduce for the engines relate to rubber parts that are starting to perish, and the longer they sit around and don't get anything and nothing happens, the more chance they have of perishing. Now, the Figaro, the design on the brakes on the Figaro has this tendency to seize up, and it has a self-adjusting brakes. So what that means is as they start to wear out, they slightly adjust. Once that stops working, you lose loads of brake efficiency, which is why on your Figaro the brakes might seem spongy and pull to one side or another. So I'm going to take the wheels off and just show you what might be happening. You can do this job definitely on the floor. It's one of the easier jobs to do on the car, but I thought I'd do it in the air so you can see. You only need the centre cap off. You don't need the polo part out the way. I always use a cloth on top of the rag, because if you put a screwdriver in here to try and prise off this centre cap, you'll end up damaging, I mean this one's a little bit scratched anyway, but you'll end up damaging the polo trim. Once it's started to move, you can either shake it off or pull the rest of it off with a screwdriver. So they are just crimp fit, they'll just pop off. Now, you don't need one of these guns to do it, but I'm using one so that I'm not here messing about with it all day. It's 21mm. You don't need a special wheel socket really, because they're not super deep. This just saves me time while I'm making the video, so you don't watch me struggling with a spanner. The only thing about these guns is that if you go into like a tyre place or a garage and they're done up with the gun, sometimes they can be a little bit too tight when you come to undo them again. So you can use the spanner that's in the boot of the car, but it hasn't got much leverage on it, so you might find you have to put it on and sort of stamp on it to get it undone. Ideally you want what's called a breaker bar, which will undo it. Anyway, wheel comes off, obviously, lift it off out of the way. So these brakes, we're forever changing them because the bits are starting to stick and bits are starting to break, and even though they're brakes, you'd assume that you don't have any grease on them at all, but they need to be completely greased up. So what happens is this part of the caliper moves, these bits slide. Firstly I'm going to undo that one, then I've got a new one on the bench and I'll show you the bits that go wrong. I'll show you how they come undone because they're actually really easy. They're super straightforward. So you've just got this is a 14mm, 2 bolts that go through this. Again, I always just undo these, give them a little whack. It seems to be easier than just yanking on the end of it. Saves your knuckles as well if you slip. this is also, this job, one can be done on the floor, but it can be done without removing the caliper as well. Normally I would suggest wearing gloves for this because all the road dirt is horrible. It's just that while I was using the phone as well, I thought I'd take them off. So literally these two bolts just come out. Oh. And then the caliper just pulls back. That's it. And there's the caliper. And what happens is this caliper moves backwards and forwards with these slides, and when the car gets left sat around for too long, they stop working, and you only get 50% braking because it's not properly squeezing in a pincer movement, but 2, you get braking only on one side, and so yeah, it drags and pulls, and this disc starts to wear out. And you can see here on this one, actually, if you look closely, and there my nail is, this disc is already starting to crack and fall apart, and that's because the car will have been sat, this has all gone rusty, nothing's moving, and they go to drive it up the road and everything starts to clonk and bang and fall apart. But have a look on the bench here, because I'll show you what I'm doing. So this is a caliper off the car. If you're doing the job, you want to do it on the car, really, because otherwise you'll have to take the brake hose off, and that is a bit more of a pain. But these are the two slides here, and you can see this one is still moving, but it's really stiff. And what happens is these boots start to come off and it all gets stiff. So you can see here on a new caliper, so once they get too stiff and they're no good, but you see that should be able to move like that, and so it should float. You call it a floating caliper. It's a bit, they use them on motorcycles and stuff as well, not so much on that many cars. But yeah, that's what you need to do. If yours looks like that and not like this, you need to take it all out, paint that with grease, get it all nice and greasy, and put it all back together. You've got 2 of them, but like I say, do it on the car. You can just leave it hanging while it's doing it. If yours have stuck up, we can supply a kit which just has the bits in it. So that's the bits that you get in the kit. So you get the sliders, the little nice pretty little new rubber boots to protect it, and you get one of the pistons as well. The piston is the main bit in the middle that's pushing the brakes backwards and forwards. So if you want to overhaul them, you can do that. Now the back brakes tend to be even worse. If you leave a Figaro, if you've ever got in your Figaro and gone to pull off and it goes kadonk and makes a massive bang, it's probably the backs that are starting to come back together. So firstly, I'd say if you can get away with it, don't even bother putting the back brake on. Just leave the car in park most of the time, because it'll yeah, there's no need to, but obviously sometimes you do have to. Just gonna get those bits on the floor. Just use the backs. Now on the backs, it's a completely different style, but again, because of the design type, you get the same challenges. You still get the brakes sticking. The backs are worse because they're harder to repair. They're a lot more fiddly. That's why the fronts is worth keeping an eye on them. Right, so with the backs, hopefully this will come off because these are a bit of a pain. So the back has a drum brake, which means it works slightly differently. If you get it apart, you just slowly tap it and it will come out. Now, what's happening on the back is you've got the drum there and these two shoes, and the shoes open up and press onto the drum. But what happens? It's all rusty and scored inside. They open up, they stick to the drum, and then you go to pull forward and everything sort of starts to fall apart, and the lining, this bit here, this is the surface, the friction surface, this piece is what slows it down. All of that fails. Also, those can start to leak. Again, rubber parts that are starting to leak, but that's not necessarily something that you can stop from maintenance. But yeah, leaving the handbrake off is the best thing for the back, and driving the car, because it takes a couple of hours, I think, off the top of my head, to get all this stuff apart, depending how much of it you're doing and which bits are broken. But yeah, just driving it as often as you can will eliminate as much of that as possible. Part of your service schedule, if whoever's doing your service is if they're doing a thorough service, will be to strip the brakes out and grease them, but it is something that you can definitely do yourself. If you want to upgrade the brakes, you can do that as well, which is good, because like you say, the brakes aren't that great already. We do like a stainless steel braided upgrade kit, and so what that does is means that fluid that was coming through down the rubber pipes that we looked at, when you stamp your foot on the brake, they swell up and there's loads of inefficiency and it doesn't work as well. So you can put those on and they'll improve that. You can also put uprated pads on there, so you've got a better surface. And this is what that will look like when you've got new discs, you've got new pads on it, it's all nice and shiny. It works a lot better, and you will definitely improve the braking. These are a performance pad as well. So yeah, brakes. Hopefully you find that useful. You can definitely save money on that. The cost of taking them apart and putting new pads and discs on. Because the thing is, when they go rusty like this one and they stick, they not only do they ruin the pad, but they ruin the disc as well, and then you're into, you know, whatever, 150 quid to try and get all of that stuff renewed. So drive it, keep it greased. Right, next point after brakes. The next thing you should be doing is just keeping an eye on the fluid. So I'm going to go through this. I know I've shown you briefly before how to do this, but we'll run through it today because there's some good tips I can give you on this. Hopefully my colleague Christian is watching, because we've got a photo that we wanted him to share, which is incredibly common, which is around doing the basic engine checks and checking the fluids. Right. Start with brakes. I know some of this stuff we've covered over the last few weeks, but it's just worth you doing it. You know, when this lockdown ends, we want to be enjoying the cars, and if we're doing things to them, we want to be making them look nice, making them drive faster, all of those sort of bits. So just keep an eye on these maintenance bits. Right, so .4 brake fluid. The pot says .3, but one, they don't do that. .4 is fine. It's highly unlikely that yours has even got .3 left in it. So you do that by checking the pot. You can see the level on the side of the pot. You've got a little, see down there, minimum, maximum. That's what you want, nice and full like this. When you look in the top, you don't want to see any grit or any dirt or anything like that in there. You want it to look nice and clean. You want to be refilling it from one of these with some little spout or a funnel on there, because brake fluid is corrosive. If you spill it all down the body, it's going to ruin your paintwork, and it's going to cost you more than it would to get someone to top up your fluid. Great tip I can give you: you can either buy one of these or you can have it tested when you're here. But brake fluid is hydroscopic, and it absorbs damp out of the air. So the reason that brake fluid needs changing is because it absorbs too much water, and then again it doesn't work. So it starts to compress, and when you put your foot on the brake, it goes all squidgy. A little bit like the effect you get when you've got the original hoses on. So this kit basically tests the fluid, and you can buy these online. It tells you how much percentage of water's in it. So this one has got 1%. Once you get to 4%, you really need to change it, because it's not going to be working properly. So that's something we do as part of any of our checks or servicing. We would check that, but you can do it yourself, and you can buy those kits, Google it, they'll be everywhere. So you could buy one of those, and then you can keep an eye on it yourself. If you have to drain the fluid, it's a little bit more of a pain, but the main thing is to make sure you've got fluid in there. Next thing is the oil. Now I'll do this for you because oil is pretty straightforward, but there's a few little tricks to it that just make it easier. So ideally you'd do this once the car's at least been run a little bit. So firstly I'd wipe it off, then the dipstick is buried a bit. It's easier because I'm doing this while I'm got the bonnet off the car to show you. But I dip it in, take it back out, and then I always check the back. So you can see this is up to the top level. I think this car's just been serviced, but I'd always check on the back, because on the front for some reason these dipsticks never work. Look, it looks like it's over full to there, and to be honest it's almost as bad, or well, not quite as bad, but it's not ideal to have the fluid too high either. So that is my top tip there. Use the back of the dipstick because they're not very good. So that's what I'd say about the oil. Next thing you want to do is check the water. Super important, the water. Most major failures we see, there's something, the water's gone or water's not done, water's not been done properly. Right, you do not need to top it up in here. Don't worry about this pot, it's just expansion. You don't need to. If there's some in there, I wouldn't worry about it. This has got a tiny dribble in the bottom, but it's just for expansion. If you top that pot up, it's not going to do you any good. This is the bit here, this is what cools the engine. Basically you want it like that. You just want a little bit of a gap, and just see, you don't want to see the fins. If you can see little fins at the top, little mesh, if you can see anything other than water in there, then you need to look into it. A Figaro with no water in will last minutes before it's dead. So that's why I'm always banging on about hoses and water and all of this type of stuff, because it's one of the main things that will help protect the engine. So in there, when I'm topping that up, we just put it into a watering can, and we'd be using red antifreeze mixed in here. I think it's about 5-to-1 we mix it at, something like that. But it's not so important. It is important to get the same colour antifreeze, but normally you can tell. So if I look in here, if I can't tell visually, I can always dip a white cloth in, or I can't see it on my finger, but yeah, you can see anyway that it's red in there. So you would look in there, you go into your local garage or your motorist centre and get the same colour antifreeze and top it up, because it will also help the system from going rusty. It's not only because of the weather. The oil we're using is a 1040, so this is a bottle we've got. We use a commercial one, but this is one that we've got here. So it's a 1040 semi-synthetic. If you read the data on the cars, I think it recommends a different engine from the factory, but the reason we use this is because it's a little bit thicker. And what you've got to bear in mind is that all of these cars are old. Even when they've been rebuilt, there's still other parts on them that are old, and the tolerances will be slightly less, so slightly thicker oil. The 10 and the 40 relate to how thick the oil is at different temperatures, and that's why I said drive the car for 15 minutes, because you're going to get the viscosity at both temperatures. Right, now, the next thing that I would check, and this is an unusual one. Let me see if my colleague is on here and he's shared any of the photographs. Turbo cooling down. Pat, I know, I'm getting to it. Someone says about the cat. I know, we're going to do a feature on the cat in a minute. Cat is my favourite thing. Right, this is an important one to check. You'd be amazed, Christian, if you're watching this, will you share that photo that we sent you a little while ago? This is the air filter. Takes air from here, sucks it in as you're driving, takes it round the engine, round the pipes, into the turbo, boom, into the engine, makes it give you that little mop as you go up the road. Now, I am amazed every time I see it, but there are so many Figaros that have animals living in here. The ones that have been in storage for ages, it is sometimes incredible. These air filter housings will get literally full of mouse nest, a mouse nest, and sometimes you'll find a small dead animal in there as well. I have some good tips to tell you how to spot this as well, if it's coming. This one has, actually I haven't taken this off today, so for all I know in a minute a rat might jump out, but I think the trusty cat would have noticed. Got it. Look at it on guard there, keeping an eye, keeping me safe. Right, so in the top of here you'll get animals, and also under here, this is the air filter. You literally just lift it out, make sure it's clear, make sure that it's not all full of leaves in there, and then that just screws back on. It's important to do that, and it's really common, and I've seen it trash bits of the engine because people try and start it and then all the leaves fly through into the car. The animals crawl throughout this bit. Again, that's something you'll get round from just driving the car. It's nearly always the ones that have been sat in a garden for a little while. Now, my top tip on how to spot if you have got animals that are trying to get into your car, and it's amazing, people that come out in the middle of cities get this. I've never quite worked out what they love about the car. You will see teeth marks. They always seem to chew this air conditioning pipe first. You'll get teeth marks all along the front of here, and also this red thing they seem to like on the red thing cover for the positive on the battery. You'll look at it and there'll be little like scratches. They'll look like scratches, but they're not. They're where the mice chew them. So definitely keep an eye on that, because you can end up with major engine problems that can cost you, you know, a couple of days' labour if you've got to try and pull all the inlet manifold apart and try and work out what bit of poor little mousie's tail's gone in there or whatever has happened there. While we're on it, and while I remember, Pat and some other people have asked me about the turbocharger and whether you need to cool it down or not. Now, the reason that I don't recommend that you need to do that is because the turbocharger on a Figaro has got cooling here, which is from oil, and it's also got cooling here, which is from water, to try and keep it cool. One of the reasons that this engine does have a lot of problems is because of the amount of heat and the high revs that are coming with the turbocharger, but it doesn't really make much difference cooling it up and down. It's not going to hurt, but it doesn't make a massive amount of difference. The reason the turbos fail is because eventually this pipe gets blocked. You can see the pipe's minute and it has to feed a massive amount of oil through there into the turbo and back round. So the best thing you can do is just keeping clean oil in the car. Again, that 15 minutes running around the block, it really makes the difference, because as all the oil gets sludgy in here, that's what makes the difference. I know it's one of those things, because I do it. I'm driving along in my car, it's just done it last week, and it pops up and says you need a service, you need to change the oil, and you think, oh, do I need to? Or you get a call from us to tell you your car's due a service, or however it comes up. But it really does help in the long run, you know. It's like, you know, these things, they get you in the end. It might not seem like it makes any difference on the day, but it will make a difference eventually. The other thing that, funnily enough, we've sold a lot of is tyres. And some of it is because cars get sat around and the tyres go flat and they don't get blown up properly. And then eventually it damages them, and if you're not careful you can end up having to chuck them away. The other thing is, on the Figaros there's not really many high-end tyre suppliers, so the tyres are generally pretty cheap, and that means the rubber's not as pliable as it could be. So I'll just show you this because it's quite useful. Just come and have a look at this door shut. So the tyre pressure is written on the car, so there's a little sticker here. If your car's been painted it might be missing, but there's a little sticker here and it says 155 SR12. Now they're never almost fitted to the car. 165 7012, they're almost always fitted to car. Then it says 2.0 and 2.0, and that just means that it's 2 bar at the front and the back. most Figaros and all the ones that we do are fitted with the 165 70 12. You can tell which tyre yours is because it will say 165 70 12. Now that 2 bar is a touch under 30 psi, so you just need to blow the tyres up to 30 psi. You can do that with a foot pump, or you can do it at a garage, or you can get one of these things that we use. That's the same as you'll find at a garage. You can do it any way, but do blow them up and make sure they're the right temperature, because otherwise you're going to chuck away 200 quid on a set of tyres if you just leave the car sat around with flat tyres. The other top tip I will give you is, if you look at your tyre, and I think all tyres have this, here, you see on this tyre here, you've got a 4-digit number. That one is 0116. So that means that that tyre was made in January 2016. Now, it's important to note that, because if your tyre is 15 or 20 years old, it's going to be perished. The other thing you can do to check it is look in here between the treads. So this is a nice new tyre. It's made in 2016. I don't know how long it's been on the car, but it's not cracked in here. So it's worth looking at that to make sure they're in good condition. The other thing that will make your inflation easier is these. They're pretty cheap. They're just a tyre extension valve, because sometimes these ones aren't too bad, but sometimes they're a real fiddle to get to. When we've got this off the car now, it wouldn't be too bad. We could get the tyre inflation tool, whichever one we were using, on the car. But these just literally, you can get these in our shop, these just literally screw on, and they just mean it's accessible, because some of these tyre inflation tools you can't get on, and you need to pull the polo trim off. The polo trim comes off the same way as the centre, but it's just hard work and it's a pain to get it off. Right, what else have we got on here? At the moment, you might... yeah, the cat. Can we have a name for the cat? This cat, we just call it the cat. It's been in here, it's been with us for about a year, and it wanders around the workshop. It gets carried around the workshops, and we take photos of it and make funny Snapchats with it in between fixing cars. So if you'd like to name the cat, that would be really good. He's looking a bit sad because it's Friday and his mates aren't ready to come out yet. The next point was about protecting the car and making sure it doesn't get ruined inside. So if you have your car in a garage, your Figaro in a garage, it's important, if you're doing some longer term storage like it is at the moment, you know, if we're locked down, I don't know what week we're on, probably week 5 or 6 or something like that. The best thing you can do really is have it covered, but with the windows open a bit, is how it will store best, how it will not get too much damage. We see lots of cars, ones that ship abroad, ones that people, you know, have in storage, that get really, really damp inside. And so you have got to be careful, keep the windows shut, open the windows if you can. If the car's outside, I don't suggest putting it under a cover. Or if you do, it needs to be breathable and you need to be a little bit careful. But yeah, covering it up is definitely going to help it. And if you do, just be careful of the inside. You can buy those little absorbent kits that a lot of people use they're a bit like the things you get in a new pair of trainers, you know, the little beads. And you can get those to go inside the car. Even those will help, especially if you're watching, if you're in the UK, if you're one of our English friends, or living here, or actually in Europe, and it's a bit wetter, then those will really help, because we've seen cars that have had the interiors nearly ruined just because they've got a little bit damp. So that's my list, actually. That is my list of things that will save you money. And I think that definitely beat 480 quid that I said I was going to do. The cat should be called Mozart. Lynette, you get it. You were the first one in. Cat in Pinocchio. Have to be obvious here. Is the cat in Pinocchio called Figaro? Oh, Lynette, it might be superseded. All right, we'll have a think. We'll put it to the vote. Guys, have you got any other questions? Thank you for staying on. There's still 50 of you here. Thank you for making my Friday. Send me some love. See if I can send some love. Oh yeah, look. Send some love at the screen at the same time. I hope that I'm going to get to see some of you soon coming in here. Like I said, we've had a few people come in today. Most of our cars are getting delivered at the moment on the truck. And if you are thinking that if you need some work, or if you're thinking of some restoration, I would say that the other thing, as well as breakages that we're getting called with at the moment, is the such a common thing where people just ring and say, look, my Figaro really needs some TLC. It's looking tired, it's been outside, it hasn't been under a cover, and it's just starting to look a bit worn. And if that's your Figaro, we can definitely help you. Ring up. We've got Danny and Christian are back in the office, answering the phones, and yeah, we can help you with that. We can collect the car on a trailer. We've got a fantastic, or on a truck even, we've got a fantastic way of sharing the things that we find on the car using a video platform that plugs into the back of our website. So you just get a link and a password, and you'll get an explanation from somebody telling you what's wrong with the car, things you could potentially do. You don't need to visit us as well if that's at the moment, or even if you want to book for when we reopen, because we've got a massive list of cars that you know, for when things fully get going again. Although we can do it at the moment, we're motor trade and we're working safely, so we can stay open. But yeah, if you'd like us to help you with that, if your car needs some TLC, then do call us, because we can help at the moment or any time. Yeah, let me see if you've got any other questions. What suggestions do you have for US owners who can come to your shop? Karen, we are going to be opening a shop. We were close to opening a shop before all this came on in Texas. I don't know, where are you based, Karen? Not sure how quickly these comments come through, because I can see there's a bit of a time delay. Which state are you, Karen? Paul says, how easy to check and top up the gearbox oil. Alright Paul, I'll do that one before we go. I'll just keep this here so I can see where Karen is as well. Yeah, I didn't do the gearbox oil, and the gearbox oil is a... Actually, I'll put that there because otherwise it'll go funny. The gearbox oil is a real pain in the arse. My hands are too fat for this job. Okay, so gearbox oil. Start the car, drive it around the block, get the oil warm when you're doing your 15-minute lockdown drive, bring the car back, put it back on the drive, lift the bonnet up, leave the car running, put the vehicle in park and leave it running in park with a warm engine. Then you need to get down to the dipstick. Now that is, crikey, I don't even know, I see it from this side, right down behind here. I need a bit of light on it. Yeah, I think we will. Let me try and lift it. So, can you guys see, like, there is the end of the dipstick. So if I just lift it all the way up and through, there is the dipstick there. And then there is the fluid levels on it. So it's directly in this little hole here. The best way to get to it is the way that I'm going, which is sort of one hand down the back and one hand at the top. And normally it's got a bit more colour to the end of it so you can see it, but you can see it's like a little ball shape you can just get your fingers on. Now you've got two settings. It's a bit more complicated than the oil one. You've got two different readings, one at the bottom and one at the top. One is a hot reading and one is a cold. So either way, you have to have driven the car. If you just get in it, it's going to show that it's over full. It's going to be up here somewhere, and you're going to think, what's going on with the car? You have to have run it, but hot or cold, either way. Then on the back, if you look really closely, I don't know if you can see it, but you'll see on your one, it's marked cold on the back. So either hot or cold, you'll know which way it is, and then the setting will be on there. Now, if you need to top it up, you use Dextron 3, and you'll have a similar pot to the brake fluid that we looked at. But what I would say is that the easiest way to do it is with a big funnel. I haven't got one to hand here, but you can get those long funnels that are sort of that long with a flexible end on them, and that's what I would use to top it up. You could do it with one of these, but it needs to have a really long neck on it. So yeah, that's the gearbox fluid. To be honest, the gearbox fluid's not really a maintenance issue, a maintenance check part. If the gearbox is starting to slip, if the gears are starting to slip, you might be losing some fluid, you might have a leak somewhere, but it's not really something that you have to check and do anything about that often. Yeah, really, if there's a fault or the gearbox starts to slip or it won't change gear properly, you know, sometimes when they do that thing when they go up to 4,000 and then when they change gear it goes and all jumps forward and jumps around, that's when it's starting to wear out. Right, Kent says yes, New York, please open New York. I don't know if it's going to be New York. It looks like it will be Texas, which is still 3 or 4 hours away from there. But we'd have transport set up and everything like that. Right, let me see. Is there any more questions, guys? Because otherwise, me and the cat are going to go out for Friday night drinks. Great idea. Good tip. The paint, top notch. Jennifer Brooks, hello. Ian Harper, I'm replacing the seals. Best place to put the drain. Really back at the front in. The design's not great anyway, so the best thing you can do. Guys, that's it. Any more questions, send them in. We'll go through your kind comments about the engine stuff on our super fig. We'll come back to you on that. I'll share the other secret car I've got coming over the next couple of weeks. You'll like that one. And that's it. Thank you again. Lockdown hugs. Thank you for sending your Friday afternoon with me. I'll be back with some more stuff. Send me any feedback on bits you want to know, and I'll think of something else to do exciting for next week. Have a great afternoon. Take care, guys. Bye.